Hello, stellar people. I'm Trey, and welcome to the channel, where progress is a process. And today, we'll be going over my process for watercolor. This is part one of a 3-part watercolor tutorial. In this part one, we'll go over the basic materials. And part two, we'll go over the basics of painting, wet into wet, dry brush, and the like. And in part three, we'll go over my total process in making an illustration or painting an illustration. So what better place to start than with paint, right? Watercolor comes in two variations. There's the tubes, and then there's the dry cakes. I use the tubes, even though they're more expensive, but I've tricked out my set for years, so I kind of know what I like and don't like. But for starters, I would get a pan of dry. They usually come as a set with the basic colors: yellows, reds, blues, greens, purples, browns, and sometimes a white gouache. And this is my travel set that I use, when I go out to paint outdoors and whatnot. It's a cool little set, and it's usually one of the cheapest forms of watercolor that you can get. If you don't want to do with all these tubes and trying to figure out what colors and whatnot, don't worry about it. The set will have you covered. Will have you covered. Okay. So just the basic set will have everything you need. And that's a great place for beginners to start. And remember, we always go for the lowest, right? We don't want to go for the top of the line. We just want to get our feet wet. Now for me, I have accumulated all this stuff from doing this for quite some time. I think I've been doing this for at least 10 years. So I kind of have my set. I know what colors I like, and I have them. Well, I'm breaking them down right now into the color groupings I have. So on the top I have my yellows and oranges, and yellow is the best for coverage, that you can go over it with another color and it will fall back, right? It'll disappear. A red, which is top right, the reds on the top right are staining colors, which means once they're down, you can't really lift them up, take it out. If you make a mistake, that red will usually show through. Browns are pretty good and usually pretty neutral. On the middle left, the bottom left are my green set. My purples are on the middle right, and my blues are on the bottom right. This is my whole tube set. And I can replace some, take some out, put some in, but this is mostly what I have. And of course, watercolor, you need to have something to put the watercolor in. So these little dishes will hold your watercolor, and you can make them concentrated by using less or more water. And of course, I have my brushes. I have many, but you don't need, I say you only need 3. A detail brush, a middle brush, and a thicker round brush. You need something for the water to go into, some containers for water, so you can clean your brushes. You gotta keep it clean. Paper, one of the most important things. Now, watercolor paper is textured. Comes in various weights from 90 to 300. 90 is the least thick, and 300 is what I like to use. And it's because I kind of beat up the paper. I'm pretty harsh with it. And there's also blocks of watercolor paper, which is the easiest and most convenient form. And this is a cold press 20 sheet 140 pound, so it's the middle of the road block. and I have about 3 of them, and they're great for studies, for quick one shot, one layer, or maybe 1 to 2 layers, in and out, just rip it and go type. And there can be cut out from the board, but I use a lot of the sheets, and this is what Arch's 22 by 30 inch 90 pound cold press. That's what the CP is. And here's a 300 cold press, and this is 140. And they come in packs of 5, but you can also buy single sheets. But since I use a lot of stuff, I usually go for the 5. And for me, I take these single sheets and I prepared some templates for like final outputs. But I take the single sheets and I fold them into 4s to make it easier and more manageable. If you want to go large, you can go large, but usually if I'm doing it, my illustrations usually are on the smaller side. There's more logistics to larger paintings. You have to have things worked out pretty well. But for smaller paintings, this is what I usually go for. So yeah, I fold the paper in half, and then I cut it. And you can use a whole sheet. You can use half a sheet. So I've made a template for that too. But I mostly use the 4s, which is just cutting, folding these in half and then cutting that again. I try to use all of the whale. Try to use every single bit of it, because this stuff can get pretty expensive. The 190 pound is less expensive than 300, because 300 is thicker, and your quality may vary by producer, the maker of the paper, and sometimes you might get a bad batch or a bad piece of paper, but that just becomes scrap paper for later. So I try to use everything whenever I can. But the blocks are the least expensive and best for starters. So here we have my 4 sheets. This is an illustration on one of the 4 sheets. And I have already made templates because I've done this before. My templates have a red line, blue line. Red line is where I will tape it to a solid surface. The blue line is I try to take my painting past the blue line to the red line. But the blue line is what I'm going to cut for a perfect illustration. Yeah, I just find it the best way for me. And it's, you can do it however you wish, but I've kind of made a standard for myself so that I know pretty much the output of what I'm going to get. And for transfer, I take the image and I print that out on regular paper, just standard copy paper. You can make it a little bit faded, which I would probably recommend. You print out the image, you take it to the watercolor paper, and I use Cero paper, which is this blue transfer paper, which also comes in red and a graphite color. And I put that underneath the illustration, and I copy it or transfer the image down onto paper. Now, you don't have to do this. Some people you can draw right on watercolor paper. Faber-Castell, I hear, does not smudge or bleed, but I just do this for my own. It's my process. I've kind of gotten used to doing it this way, so this is kind of how I do it. And this process can be pretty long, depending on how detailed your illustration is. So you can give yourself between, maybe a day, or it depends on the complexity. Because your hand can get kind of tired. If it's very detailed oriented and it's very large, it'll take, days to a week. But this is, simple. So yes, the red blue line, the tape will go to the red line with the illustration on it. Yeah, I usually take the illustration, put that on the paper before I then board it up. And I use gummed paper tape, but you can also just use regular tape as long as it's sturdy and it has, it can strong enough to hold the paper in place. And this paper tape or watercolor tape, butcher tape, whatever you want to call it, it has a wet side, a gummy side that you wet or activate with water, and then you put that down and it tapes the paper in place so that it doesn't warp, shift, or move. And because it's water, the water will shift and move to wherever ripples occur naturally. So it's a way to control the watercolor so it doesn't warp. And these sheets of wood I got from Home Depot. I had a large piece cut into 10 slices, and that all of it cost me $10, which is pretty good. And so this is the final, what it looks like when it's down and ready. But there's one more thing I have to do. All right, once I transfer it over, I then take this large hockey brush, just a large flat brush, go to a sink and use a lot of water with the brush to wipe it down, and then I dry it afterwards with paper towels. And what that does is that it removes fingerprints, oils from skin on contact, and also the transfer paper, residue, and it knocks it back, a little bit, and now it's clean and pristine, and it's ready. It's all ready, and you can see the difference here between the freshly transferred image and the image that is just a little bit paler, but everything's there, and it's ready to be painted. That is my preparation and my materials for watercolor. And this was just part 1 that went over the materials. And part 2, we will take this image of Beautiful Beast Kiss that we just, boarded up, and we'll do some basics of watercolor, dry brush, wet to wet, the basic techniques, and then go on to painting a 1 layer of Beautiful Beast Kiss. So I hope to see you in the next episode. So keep shining. Bye-bye.